Hi, host Eric here. Host talking with people. Let's talk about spiking things and talk about Trenton and his bag of spikes. So Trenton is an ENTP, and he likes to do this. He'll tell like a story or something. Then he'll establish that he's not lying about the story, and then he'll set up a bunch of things like, "Now, if you think this, here's the answer to that." And if you think this, here's the answer to that. And if you think this, here's the answer to that. That's his way of dealing with FE because he wants to make sure that all the possible FE failures that he can imagine, that he spikes them ahead of time so that um, you can't be called out on it, right? No, I addressed that beforehand. I said, now you might conclude X. But that's not okay because why? Now you can't just go ahead and conclude X anyway. So I think that's a funny manifestation of an ENTP at the age of 18 or 19. I was very much like that. I don't think I displayed quite like Trenton. I think I displayed a little more sneery or something. But interrupt me anytime, please, Kit Kats. Anyway, the point is, spiking is a anything, or at least an ENTP thing. Do you do it? Ken is an INFJ. Do you do any spiking? Are there certain circumstances in which you do as a INTJ JMAT? And Whimsical Kit Kats, I forget what you are. I think you are INFP.
She's an INFP, from what I remember, and I think it's funny you just called JMAT an INTJ, I think.
He's not?
Right? Did you call him an INTP? He's an INFJ. He's just a robot. That's why he comes off as a different type.
Oh. Well, because the way you were describing in this conversation, I just sort of thought, oh, you must be talking about an INTJ. I didn't remember what he was. I assumed.
No,
You know,
he's a particularly stoic INFJ. But, yeah. First mistyped as ENTP, now INTJ.
did I mistype you as ENTP? Yeah.
You mistyped me as
I do love you, J-Matt. It's just I'm bad at typing people.
you mistyped me as an INTP.
Well, there you go. For further evidence to my point here. But I want to talk about this spiking thing. Do you do that? Or did you ever have a period in your life when you did do that? As you guys with your second slot FE obviously are much more natural with it. It would seem to me if you went through a phase where you did that, you probably got through it pretty fast. Any thoughts on that?
Now, what's like a quick description of spiking? Because I think I tuned you out there for a
Okay.
minute.
It's just saying, okay, now I hope you don't think that I'm doing this because of X, Y, or Z. And I don't think I'm doing it because of this, but here's what I'm going to say now that I've given you a bunch of spikes. Like, you might conclude this, but don't conclude that, and don't conclude this, and don't conclude that, and don't conclude this. Now here's what I'm going to say.
That's been pretty much consistently going on for me since I was about 12, maybe. That hasn't stopped. That's still...
But you don't say it. You don't say those things.
Well, it also has to depend, like what I was talking about the other day, when it comes to, like, letting my and like letting my speech being led by NI. If I'm in a comfortable, sort of like a place that I think is comfortable, like here in the chat, like I'm fine with just talking. But if I'm like in a formal social gathering, that
Like,
tends to turn on a lot more, where I find myself qualifying or being like, well, now don't take this the wrong way, or stuff like that.
like if you're in a harem or a brothel? Is that what you're saying?
I've never been in either, so I can't speak from experience.
Me neither. But I don't think they really have harems you could go to. I think you have to have your own harem by being a Middle Eastern ISIS overlord. Yeah, free. They're not free though. At the brothel, you have to pay for it as well. I've never understood that at all. consistent with my type description, I'm just looking for a relationship. You know, I remember being taken to a titty bar, and my experience of that was like, I don't like this at all. I don't like anything about this, and it makes me uncomfortable. I want to leave.
There are a lot of things that are considered like traditionally like, I mean, I guess those that it's not specifically a masculine thing, but there's like a lot of things that are considered like traditionally like pastimes and like rites of passage that I just don't understand. Like to me, like going to a strip club or something like that just seems odd. Like I mean, I'm not passing judgment or anything. There's that FE spike you were referring to. I'm not judging. I'm not passing judgment on or anything on anyone.
Treasure!
But,
Treasure!
Yep. But yeah, it's just like
that's the funny thing about those FE things, though, right? It never occurred to me that you were judging at all. That never even crossed my mind. I was just thinking, because what I was thinking when you were saying this stuff about the strip clubs and stuff, is I was thinking of analogies of things that are like ugly that some people want to look at even though they're ugly. You know, like it's ugly. It's ugly human behavior. It's sort of fundamentally exploitative in some sense.
Well, it's also to me it seems kind of weird because from my perspective, I don't know how it is for other INFJs, but I know for me, it definitely seems like a considerably intimate experience. So to have just like 30 random guys you don't know just sitting around ogling in your direction, just with sunglasses on in a dark room, you're like, what are you?
The Whimsy Bot has no need for a strip club. And listen, Whimsy Bot, as long as you judge them whimsically, it's okay. Remember that. Whenever you are passing judgment, fly on the gossamer wings of whimsy.
You know, talking about the FE spikes, I think I've, you know, you're talking about how you weren't even considering that, you know, that you didn't even consider that you might be judged by what I was saying. I think for me, it's actually been heightened by the fact that I've lived in a household of people, as I've said before, who value FE consciously, but have strong yet unvalued FI, because you can have a lot of very strong hurt feelings and a lot of people who don't necessarily know how to handle them.
Hurt feelings are so much fun.
They make me want to die a little bit on the inside, and in fact, every single time I experience someone in a negative mood, I do die a little bit on the inside.
Well, I mean, you know, if they're gonna have hurt feelings, they better have actually done something. Then it's fine. Then I'm interested in going into that sort of accountability arena. That's fine. But most of the time, somebody has hurt feelings, there's probably just being, in my mind, they're just being fussy. But if you tell them that, I've learned well that if you tell them that, they don't consider that an adequate response to their fussiness.
Which is sort of weird, because that's sort of an adequate FE response, is to just say you're being fussy. But I think FE learns that FI has a differing opinion on the matter.
Yeah. Yeah, and
I think if FE
like
were just talking,
those FE DOMs, they know, they have FI, they don't really talk, they talk about their feelings a lot, but they're not really talking about their feelings. But they're influenced strongly by them. I don't quite get it. I don't quite get how the ESFJ does their feeling thing exactly, because it's super FE, but it sure is arbitrary like FI.
I notice it seems to get extroverted in a way that it's like the people around them aren't doing it. to me, it almost seems like it turns into, it gets, because it's not consciously valued, I think they try to explain it through like a detail SI like, you know, like the people around me, they're not doing their job. They're not keeping up with certain things.
My decision is not arbitrary because it's been done like that before, at least one time.
Yeah.
Right. The last thing they get to
perspective.
the last thing they get to explain why something's not arbitrary is TI. But here's the thing. They're pretty good at it, but they're not using it for anything. But it's just at pantomiming it. So it sounds like you're having a conversation with them, but you're not getting anywhere. I spent years trying to decipher what was going on with my wife. I could have sworn we were having a conversation about something. I know I had a point. I know we were arguing about a point. Where? How does she do this? What the fuck happened there? I mean, she just sort of, shift ground and wiggle and dance and cry, and then all of a sudden I'm off my game.
I don't know if you ever had this, but where it's like, you ever get like the 0 to 60 sort of thing, and then back down to 0, where it's like there's like this emotional spike that happens, and you're like, oh no, they're mad, and then you expect them to continue to be mad, and you walk in the room. It might be 3 hours later, it might be 30 seconds later, but then they're right as rain, and you're like,
who?
What happened? ESFJs.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. That's what I'm saying. It's
sometimes. Now, you can count on me almost always having totally forgotten about the thing 6 minutes after the huge fight happened. But with ESFJ, you don't know. You don't know how fuzzy she is. If she's gonna really whip up a good fuss froth, then she could be mad 6 hours later. If she's in that mood where she's viewing things through the angle of things are good and I'm happy, then this is just a perfect example of how nice and forgiving and how easily she gets over shit. And this will be an example now I can use in the future. Right? Like that kind of shit. They're tricky. They're tricky. With ESFJs. They'll trick you. You gotta watch out for them.
I would like to touch on what J Matt had said earlier on in the chat. He had said something. Let me try to scroll up to that. He said that his FE is strange and how it tends to get overrun by his Enneagram 1, and how the Enneagram 1 tends to hurt people's feelings. I think it's funny.
You are imperfect.
So something I think is funny with INFJs is like the almost like lack of self-awareness when it comes to certain things. Like, I think we do a good job of being self-aware about certain aspects of ourselves, but then we're almost like blind about other things. Like, I've noticed with him, he's not, like, I think compared to him, I probably seem gushy compared to J-Matt. But, I noticed...
I'd like to sit down, I mean, what would be weird or interesting and different is if we were, I think, sitting in an actual room and talking to each other. I bet he'd display more, because if we were doing that, he wouldn't have the option to chat in the chat, right? They would remove from him the ability to communicate with text, but you wouldn't be able to communicate with us via text. You have a little chalkboard with you, and you're going to write on the chalkboard and hold it up.
But I mean, we've been talking before where I've noticed him distinctly express FE in a very strong and very healthy way. But it's not like he undervalues it. It's just I think there's maybe, I don't know if it's an INFJ thing, like a tendency to not really recognize when you're expressing certain things. Like I noticed, like I had to talk to him for many hours and he was able to point out to me examples of me using NI or me using FE and stuff like that I wasn't necessarily able to see in myself.
Well, what I find interesting is I didn't understand what NI was at all. Or I mean, until I really got into cognitive functions, and then a while later, I finally started to sort of get, oh, this is what it means when I'm using NI. That's what I think is the key thing to understanding it for me, is like having examples from my own life that I can reference and go, oh, that's an NI moment I had there. When I'm working with something and like a song or something, and some piece of it falls into place, and I go, oh, that sounds really good, and that's definitely the one I'm going to keep. I get rid of this other shit. That's an NI moment where you go, yep, I've settled on something. This is the bit of hookiness that I want for right there or something. You know, those are NI moments because you're allowing that simple truth to come and say, choose me, and you say, okay, I will choose you. I won't say, okay, but can I just make sure I haven't seen all the possibilities yet? That's the tendency, right? So my evolution is about not doing that. Recognizing knowing when to not do that and when to do that. How do you explain NE? So I explained to you like the one I don't use, how I use it. You do the same thing with NE.
NE, I don't know if it... I'm trying to think of how I would use NE. I don't know if I mean, I know that I use it. I know it's high up. I mean, it would be the opposing. But I'm just trying to think of an example where I would use it.
Talk me through your joke making process. You make some jokes sometimes, and
I joke. I dabble. I dabble in the joking.
You make some jokes, yeah. You've been known to offer some risible offerings. Mm-hmm. So, what's the process by which I'm talking? You hear something, you're like, "Oh, okay, this is gonna be a joke." How does that joke develop in your head?
I kind of struggle with being able to identify how things develop in my head, because sometimes I almost get the impression that things aren't really, and this might be a function of NI, I get the distinction that things aren't really developing in my head. Things come into my head, and that I can either choose to say that as it comes in, or I can choose to ignore it and it floats off.
All right, let me explain my process or experience and see if this aspect is familiar to you or not. Because it may be familiar and you're not mentioning it because, of course, it's not conscious and not valued, right? But for me, what I do, I sort of get a structure of a joke. Like, oh, I'll play this element of a sentence as absurd in some fashion. Like, I don't know. Say an answer that's ridiculous to the thing, or an analogy that's off in some way that's supposed to be funny or something like that, right? I'll have the concept of this structure, and I'll have sort of an initial joke in mind that has a couple has like one sort of base idea joke, and then I'll sit there and go, I'll sort of cycle through other possible words I could put in the same structure that I think might be a little funnier or not as funny or something like that. And then I'll pick one of those, or I won't. Sometimes there's a timing thing too. If the timing passes, then I just let that one go into the mist of time. But if I pick one, if I think, oh yeah, that's funny, then I'll say it, But I go through those possibilities like that. Do you?
Oh, sorry, I was reading the comments. I
get distracted by them too. I read them too, and I can't listen and read at the same time. So.
Well, I think for me, I do utilize what you're talking about. I think for me, and it's sort of like something that I use, but it's kind of tiring. It's something I can use for short bursts. I feel like, and I kind of have to back off because if I start trying to consider too many possibilities, I think TI tries to override it sometimes too. It tries to make sense out of too much crap. It wants to get its hands involved, and sometimes it's just you got to go with the flow.
Interestingly, I have kind of the opposite experience with NI, which is not that it's tiring, but that it's hard to reach. So
yeah, maybe that's what's tiring about it, is the extent you have to go to.
I think it's a lot easier to understand what NE is, right? I've watched Mega Bro, who's got NE in the same slot you have, attempted to demonstrate visual NE, and it was funny because it was so slow. I mean, I recognized what he was doing, right? But it was just sort of riffing off of visual ideas instead of I almost never do visual ideas.
It's like your NE's running on broadband and he's still got DSL.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch, you know. But the thing is, you can do that algorithmically. You can cycle through possibilities, right?
Uh-huh.
The thing is, if you're an NE DOM, what happens automatically. You just flip through a bunch of possibilities, all sorts of disparate things, and you're constantly making random associations all the time. So it's like that's why I'm always going off on tangents and shit like that, because it just happens. It's not something I'm deciding to do. So for me, then the TI is the thing that has to make good decisions in coordination with the FE and say, no, don't make that joke. That's not going to work. And it needs to say, oh, make sure you include Bob because Bob hasn't talked or something like that. Or I think maybe Bob wants to talk. And, shit like that. Those things are sort of running the ship while NE's playing around just kind of tossing shit up in the air. Wee! Look at this. Oh, there's some other shit over here.
So,
yeah,
would you say... Okay, so like yesterday, trying to remember what he said. I think it was JMatt who he put something into the chat. I can't remember exactly what it was. I can't remember what the first part was, but he followed it up by saying, like he said, like it's not this, it's an algorithm. He said something like that, and I just sort of followed it up immediately. Like I just saw that he had a first part, a comma, and then a second part. Like it's not this, it's that. And my brain just responded by typing in the chat, it's not delivery, it's DiGiorno. And I don't know. And for some odd reason that struck me as funny.
Right.
And I was like, I didn't quite understand why it was funny, and I don't know if that's more of an NI thing or more of an NE.
I wonder if additionally he had, that's an NI joke.
Okay.
Because I wouldn't be surprised if it was also, his thing was not just part, comma, part, it may have been the same number of words. Or it may have been the same number of syllables or something. You didn't figure that out. It probably just resonated you. Like, oh,
yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, similar flow. But I guess for the possibilities thing, I mean, which I guess is more NE. I want to be able to just pick an example, and I'm like struggling here.
I mean, right now you're asking your NE to do work. You're saying, come up with different possible angles of analysis on this thing or examples, right?
Uh-huh.
So, okay, well, God, I can't think of an example. See, what I run into problems with NE, and anybody does, is if you make it stay in one framework. You go, I'm trying to think examples of my life that are where I'm using NE, and you can't really think of them, but you could think of an example of somebody else in a different context that you've not been in where they would be using NE. So you just go, say, well, I can't think of one of my own examples.
Okay, so
like that's NE at work.
NE,
You just sort of slides.
it
slides away from whatever the frame you're in that's limiting you.
So like NE, like keep it within a framework. So I'm looking at a cup in front of me. It's like a thermos type cup. It's sort of heavy. I'm thinking to myself, What could I use that for? Could I use it for like a bottle rocket? I don't think it would work for a bottle rocket. I could chuck it at someone's head. That would probably work. Is that more like an any sort of thing? Just thinking of possibilities for something?
Yeah, except it would be a little bit more situationalized. Like if I see some weird, cool little thing, like a thermos. I don't have a thermos right. If I had an old school thermos that had like the glass metal thing, and then I pick it up. I think of it as a container. I'm like,
Okay.
like, is this cool enough container that I could put? Is there some sort of thing that I need this size container for? Or what else would I use this for? Could I build something out of this? Like, do I want to keep this? This sort of decisions I'm trying to make. Where I want to know if I can throw this away or not. Right?
Right.
This is a, am I going to throw this away question. I've had this question about a couple of things recently that I have thrown away. I sat there and I was like, well, yeah, I know it's an old broken turntable thing. But
I like.
you might need that.
Yeah.
You might need those pieces to do something with.
You know what's funny is I have that, and I thought maybe it was like an SI sort of thing, where it's like I found myself hoarding something. I thought it was like, oh, it must be sentimental value. It's like, no, it's like, I mean, it's not like, what's the name of that movie? Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I've heard this is more an example of NI, but like where he's got the mashed potatoes, he's like, this means something. It's like there's something, like I see an object that I might have, and I'm like, I could use this for something, but and he's unconscious, so I'm like, I don't know what I could use it for, but I'm sure this has a use that I could think of sometime. But I wanted to point out what KitKat said in the chat. She mentioned that, I think in reference to NE, she said it's like a mini universe inside of it, like when you're focusing on a single object or something. And I think that resonates with the idea of like many possibilities coming from a single point. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think that's you say inside of it. See, I think of it as the reconfigurer, right? Like it's
Right, yeah.
whatever it is that's around. It just sort of goes, put this here, and now let's just pretend there's one of these things, and we put that there, and you'll see. You fill in the details. It doesn't really matter. The point is, it's a genius idea. Like that's it. But Eric, you have none of the details filled in at all. In fact, it's not even really an idea, just sort of a notion. It's gonna work, guys. Trust me. That's fucking just straight up NE being like, this possibility excites me. Therefore, it's a good idea.
Yeah, I have that. It's just I think the way my brain works is it tries its best to say, no, that's stupid. Don't do that. We can't trust ourselves with that kind of thinking.
Yeah. I mean, at a certain point, you really start to have a weird relationship with decision making if you're in any Dom, I think, because I mean, I just don't really feel like I'm making decisions most of the time. Shit just sort of happens. I've been saying this for years. Candace, you just piss her off. And she asks me questions like, well, why did you blah, blah, blah. I'm like, Candace, I don't know, dude. Shit just happens, man. You keep asking me these questions. I keep telling you the same answer. Why did this happen? Why did you do this, Eric? I don't know. Shit just happens. Whatever it is. Whether it's go have a sandwich someplace or... And see, the thing is, she'd ask me why I was doing things that were not necessarily things you'd normally think you'd ask why you do it, right? Like, and it wasn't like, why did you crash into that lady's car? It's like, you know, why?
It's like, Eric, why do you sleep on that side of your body, but not all the time, just last night?
Not just the first part. Like, her question's not even that interesting. Right? It's like, why are you sitting in the kitchen when I'm trying to talk to you from the living room? Well, 'cause I can hear you just fine, and I'm getting cheese or something.
Yeah, That's one thing that gets on my nerves. I'll hear someone yell, and I'm like, yeah, and then it's just silence. And I'm like, they're gonna make me walk down there. They can't just yell upstairs and tell me what they want. And I'll get down there, it'll be something totally benign. I could have stayed upstairs and just heard. I didn't even need to come down.
You should get intercom.
Get a bullhorn. What?
Yeah.
System is inefficient. It must be renovated.
I started ignoring Delilah basically when she does that, because she used to do that, and it was kind of like an ongoing battle between the three of us. Actually, we'd play Candace, wanting her to come walk into the room I'm in, right? And then she'd play Eric. What? Come here. All right. Or sometimes if I was being petulant, I'd be like, okay, give me a second. And then just sit there and keep watching TV or something, you know. And Delilah would just be like all the time, Dad, just like yell like 5, 6, 10 times. I'd say, shut the fuck up. Come here. And eventually I just started ignoring her. And then now she comes talk to me if she wants to talk to me. Or she texts me or something. What? Kit Kats! God! I'm on the internet! Like that. Yeah. But you can imagine how annoying that would be if you guys were doing that from the house. If you guys were yelling that shit out from the house. Yelling not only my name, but the name of everybody in GoToMeeting as well, which would be strangely psychic, I guess, or something. Okay, so that brings this video to a close. Thank you for watching Talking to Famous People, and don't forget that cheese is there to be eaten.